bringing a beautiful dear friend into space with us today to open up what I know is going to be a really expansive conversation that is going to invite you into, I guess, a deeper level of introspective awareness of self. I have Tritia in front of me today. Now, technically speaking, Tritia is a lifestyle designer using her certification in Ayurveda and Yoga to help others redesign their paradigm through mindfulness, movement, and breath work. But the way that I receive her is just this beautiful, beating heart that is willing to just connect with you on a really deep and intimate level in any moment that you get to connect with her. So I'm excited to share her with you all today because I know that her story is textured and layered with, life's inevitable challenges. And I think there's going to be so many things that she is willing to share and is willing to reflect on today that will resonate deeply with many of you. So, Tritia, welcome, my love.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I have to add that I'm really excited that you put this out there. You're a huge inspiration. So the way you led our training and offer the support is really what invites me to feel that much more comfortable just letting it all out with just this idea of sharing the ick so that others know that, you're not alone and there's always a way out.
Yeah, I appreciate that so much. And I think, it really supported me over the last few years when I decided to just use podcasting as a platform to connect with my community, to actually witness the way that I would language something or describe a part of my story. And for the most part, I had to call myself out many times in the way I was describing certain chapters of my story and really realize and recognize that's a telling of the story that is kind of not even reminiscent of the truth anymore. It's what you maybe have been telling yourself or telling others. And as you hear it now and as you reflect upon it, you can see what's problematic with it. So I see these podcasts that I record, obviously, as an offering to community, but I do have this deep awareness and deep knowing that it's deeply supportive for those of us that step in and speak as well. So I'm excited for you. And I thank you for being willing to use your voice and share your stories with us today.
Thank you.
Where to begin? I want to share because I think it's lovely that, before I press record, I said, "How are you?" And you didn't bullshit. Do you want to, I guess, repeat the way that you responded to the question today? How are you? As I asked it.
Yeah, I think I kind of shrugged my shoulders in some look of defeat, but I was like, I'm okay. Because yeah, I'm not great right now and I'm not awful. I'm just okay.
Could you
Yeah.
speak to the power of honestly answering the question, "How are you?" when somebody asks that of us?
Yes, it's a new thing for me. I was the one that was always like, I'm good, because I believed at one point that you had to, like the love and light type of thing. Like you have to say you're good so that you can feel you're good and then it will be good. And I realized, no, actually, I'm pretty shitty right now. And I want to be good, but I'm not there yet, but I trust I will be. And so I'm just okay. To me, the power in that is that it doesn't, for me, when I say that I am just okay, it's me being honest. So I get to be honest with myself. To me, that's very powerful for me to be honest with myself and not pretend that I'm feeling something that I'm not.
Mm.
Um, And so even though it's still new for me, I've noticed that it allows me to really feel what I'm feeling.
And what is the experience of truly feeling what you're feeling, maybe for the first time ever in your life? What is that like?
It's kind of confusing. Feeling for the first time. Ooh, the first time for me was really heavy because it was always like, I'm okay. Like you just get through it. You muscle through it. And, there's there's nothing, you just shove, 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 you keep muscling forward. And so feeling it for the first time was almost shocking and heavy. And it was revealing like, oh, there's all of this down there that I needed to feel. And sometimes I say it's confusing because I wonder like, oh, is this is a feeling or this is a story? And when I catch myself questioning like that, I just try not to go too deep in the trying to figure it out and just feel. So in my space where I am at right now, when I feel what it is to be, how are you right now? It feels sticky.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you bring up a really interesting point, and it's something that I know is a sticking point for many people when they're trying to just be in an experience of self. The confusion between, is this something that I'm actually feeling and experiencing, or is this just the manifestation of a story that I'm telling myself? Like, what's real and what's kind of this kind of fabricated expression of narrative or storytelling that has existed within me for so long that I don't even realize that it's that. And I say to that, and I'd love to know your perspective too. I love that you said, like, not to get caught up in the questioning and the analyzing of it. But even if it is that we're maybe in something like a somatic activated healing session and we're feeling certain things and we realize, like, oh, wow, this is very tightly wound into a story, I think let it live. And I think witness the way that it actually manifests in the body and how
Mm,
it feels and what that story actually does to you and the way that it exists within you and how, I'm thinking of certain stories that I have witnessed within myself, and to really hold myself in the experience of it and not just shut it down and be like, oh, that's just a story, right? And
yeah.
discredit it and deny it, to really be like, okay, let's see what it is like to experience yourself in the moment that you are thinking and believing that story. And
Mm,
just the way that it would twist my body and how sick it would make me, and all of that was actually really supportive in, I guess, encouraging me to do the work to let that fucking story go, to really see how much it was harming me and hurting me. Do you have perspective on that or experiencing in that?
well, yeah. So two parts to that. The first one is like, okay, wow, that just revealed to me again. Oh, that was my pattern again. Like I felt like since I said I'm new at this, um, before it was just muscle through it. How are you? Good, I'm good. And you just muscle through it and you shove it down. I just noticed through what you said, the when I feel the thing and I'm like, oh, is this deep feeling, or is this me in the story? And I would just say, okay, let's just not think of the story. And that was this from hearing you speak, it almost feels like that's the same thing as saying just muscle through it. Um, so as you were saying that, I'm like, oh, just feel the feels. Through the training, there were moments whew, where I just did what you said. So it's not yet second nature. So it takes, even as you saw in us speaking, that reminder of how about if you just allowed yourself to feel the feels and notice what it does to your body. Um, there was once where I noticed how disconnected I was with my body because I was feeling the feels and the feels were coming up. And I saw myself trying to escape the feeling of it. And so I tried to bring myself back to my breath. And in doing so, I thought, I asked, okay, well, just feel the breath. And for a moment, I was like, I can't. If you were to ask me, where do you feel your breath the most? I would say, I don't know yet. Like that's how like disconnected it was. So my experience, I've had one like that. Um, and through continuously practicing, there has been some times where I have felt it and I was like, ooh, this story, as we're speaking right now, I feel a kink in my left, like hip area, almost like cramping, and my throat as I'm thinking of the stories or just our conversation. So, yeah.
Mm, mm. It's so powerful, isn't it, to offer, I guess, an invitation for people to consider. Have you ever actually felt your feelings, or have you just thought about your feelings?
Yes. Yes.
It's
Absolutely.
confronting. It's so confronting through the training. Do you know what I realized that was deeply concerning for me? That I was actually more comfortable, and I guess because it was a more practiced expression for me, um, being with what we might relate to as like shadow emotions, put very simply. So I could show you grief, I could go to shame, I could be with despair, I could be with blame, I could really embody that. I can make all the noises, my body can just do that. Joy, hopefulness, love, I can do it for a few seconds. And I realized how quickly I kind of decide for myself, that's enough. Okay, you've been happy. That's enough. Back to something else. And it was really confronting for me to realize for myself, wow, you have a really hard time letting yourself really expand within the expression of the emotions that you claim to want to experience. But you don't
Mm,
stay there. You don't stay there. And it made me deeply realize and reflect how much I was living through my son and my husband and creating moments of joy or pleasure or excitement through them and wanting to
yeah.
witness it through them. And that was enough. I was telling myself that was enough for me. And so I would spend a lot of time witnessing their joy and creating experiences to kind of, instigate that. But I wasn't actually ever truly embodying any of that for myself as myself.
Yes.
Hard, hard. I see you nodding and smiling. Does this resonate?
Yes. I think, yes, all of it does. I think as you were speaking, I was noticing, oh my gosh, yes, when during the end we had to do like a sequence of our own. And I did the shadow move and I was like, let's do it. And then it came to hopelessness, or what was this? No, I forgot which move it was now, but I was doing the move and it felt so like intense. And I was like, what? But the grief felt like uh I could get through it. And the other move felt like, oh, I'm feeling this. I am feeling it everywhere. So that I agreed with what you're saying. And it's great because as we're having this conversation, it feels so good to know, just like me, right? That feeling of, oh, I'm not alone in this, and we're all connected in some way. And when you spoke of living through your son and your husband, I didn't realize that. But in you saying that, I'm like, okay, yes. It's so much easier for me to make sure my family is like, let's do this or sacrifice that so this can happen, or make this moment celebratory for the kids and for husband. But would I go to those lengths for myself? Probably with a lot of hesitation or excuses of, well, this is more important. So as you said that, I thought, wow, yeah, I've never thought of it that way, but I can see that.
Yeah. And it can be problematic. I can recall years ago, I traveled to Thailand with my now husband, Steve, and he was just, we were dating at the time. And there's a particular beach in Thailand that was really special, really meaningful to me. And I had watched sunset there a million times over. And to me, it felt really important that he share it with me. And we'd gone, there's like a lake near this particular beach. Sounds weird, but there is man-made lake. And we were going for a run around this lake right before sunset. And he was, ahead of me or whatever. And I said to him, like, oh, are you going to go for one more lap? You might miss sunset. And he was like, no, I'll be back in time. I'll see it, whatever. I was that concerned with him seeing the sunset and appreciating the sunset that when the sun started to set, instead of me just being in that special spot in the world that really meant something to me and appreciating the sunset, I was just filled with this like deep discontent, which turned to anger, which turned to rage that he was missing it. Why couldn't I just enjoy the sunset? And it really made me realize, wow, I needed to look to him and make sure that he was enjoying it and he was taking it in and he was appreciating it and that he was having a moment before I allowed myself to have a moment. And that was really problematic. We had this whole argument about why he wasn't there and how he didn't value it. And now, years later, I reflect back and I can see how problematic it is. And I can see how much of my own suffering I created. And it's just so interesting, I think, particularly as caregivers, to realize and to just reflect on how often do we stop ourselves from feeling or having an experience because we're looking to see that everybody else is having the experience that we think they should be having in the moment.
All
Right?
the time.
Right? Yeah.
Yes. Wow. So revealing.
Now,
I've never thought of it that way, but my answer would be all the time.
it's exhausting, right? It's exhausting. It just denies us the opportunity, I think, to really authentically experience the world when we're, or our life, or just who we are and what we're kind of relating to when we're constantly putting it through a filter of another person's perspective first.
Mm.
Are you having fun? Do you see that? Do you like
Yeah.
this? You know,
Yeah.
there's an innocence and there's a real love in it. But I also, as I'm saying it, I'm like, it's very problematic. And it also puts a level of expectation on the relationships that we have. You
Yeah.
know, a level of pressure is probably a better word. A level of pressure, you know,
Yes. I can see that.
as I'm
And
saying, I'm recognizing too, sorry to cut you off, that I always like, when I speak of my son, I speak of just like, I always say to everybody, like, he gives you level 10 excitement for everything. Like, he's just like, he's so, I make the effort to do things for him because he'll get excited. But as I'm saying that, I'm like, yeah, wow, I'm really holding him or my perception of him or who I need him to be. Yeah. Is kind of, I don't know, I can't even finish the sentence for myself, but I'm like, wow, I'm putting a lot of pressure on him to maintain that response to things in the world so that I can continue to feel excited about all that's happening.
yes.
You know?
It's so interesting because I mean, this talk in itself is just revealing one thing after the other. Things that I am nodding my head in relation to because I can see it, but had we not had this conversation, I'm not sure how I'm sure somewhere down the line it would have come up. But in that, I guess for me, if I think about that, I feel like I have more of a question because hmm, I feel like when I do choose me, I feel guilty sometimes. And so learning how to, mm, like, I'm picturing me out with my family and I do that thing. Let me figure it all out because this kid wants to see that. This one wants to. So, how do I make them all happy? And then by the end of the day, I'm just like, ugh, like I'm all like burnt out because I check the list off for everyone else. And then I just try to put the, yeah, so that they don't feel that I really feel poopy about it all. Uh, but I'm not sure yet how to do it differently,
Mm.
other than what's just been revealed in being aware of it so that I can change it and then changing it so that I know how to create that within myself so I don't have that expectation like you said for my kids to like how did you guys not just enjoy this whole moment, like I literally planned A to Z which turn we would go so that it's a smooth like I don't know yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it is just, I think holding ourselves accountable
Mm.
to being really present and really embodied and really conscious of the moments that we experience something with a texture of joy or pleasure or delight or satisfaction with ourselves and stretching our capacity to be with it.
Mm.
So that maybe we are more satiated and we're not consistently just looking to other people to fill our cup, for lack of a better word, that we expand our own capacity to be satiated in our own experiencing, that we don't, maybe unconsciously use other people's experience to make us feel some kind of way because we are disconnected and potentially disassociated from our own experiencing.
Yes. Yes.
And we're both pulling faces at each other like, oh shit.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, like, okay, so what's the plan now? No. Yes.
Right. Right. And I mean, it says a lot. And I feel like I want to say this very gently because there's nothing within me that wants to judge the way that we are around our children. Because for the most part, I know everyone's doing the best that they can in the moment they're in, right?
Yes.
But I think we need to be really careful too in the way that we kind of communicate with our kids. When we might think that they're spoiled or ungrateful because they're not giving us the reaction that we
Yeah.
expected, that we anticipated.
Mm, that's a good one. Yes. You know, our son just went on this trip, this East Coast trip that middle school children do. And it was the night before, and I was sitting with him, and I'm like, okay, let's pack. Let's look at the schedule. Let's make sure you have all the outfits. And, he was, giving me like, yeah, yeah, I've got what I need. Okay. Like, okay, mom. And I was like, excuse me. Like, I'm trying to make sure you're okay. Like, what if you land and it's rainy? And where's your umbrella? It's not in there. And I did. And I feel bad about this now. And actually, thankfully, my son and I talked about it the next morning. And I did bring up I'm just trying to make sure you have everything you need. We sacrifice to make sure that you can go on this. And that guilt, that heaviness that I was throwing to him. And I think I was probably doing it from what you just said. I wasn't getting the reaction I wanted. Yeah, I see that now. Like, I see that I'm like, oh, try a little gratitude. We're sending you on this trip, and it wasn't easy. Like, that's so wrong. And sadly it came out, and I said it. Thankfully the next day we got together, and he was like, I was just really tired. And I said, I'm really sorry. It has nothing to do with the sacrifices or you showing gratitude, because I know you're grateful. I think I was just it was just me, mommy being me, like, it was my own worry of you having everything you need. I'm sure if you landed in rain without gloves and an umbrella, you would be perfectly fine. So thankfully, we have slowly built this ability to talk about how we may have not said something the way we wish we would have, and then at least explaining where it came from. So yeah, I don't like admitting that, but yeah, I love that you said we should be mindful as parents of what we're placing on them to get the reaction that we want, so that we feel that part of our cup that we are saying we have filled anyways. But no.
But I thank you for sharing, because I think you highlight the power of a redo that's always available to us. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
What I would love you to talk about, please, please help me with this. Is the feeling of overwhelming just anxiety and worry and fear when it comes to the well-being of our children. And I know this is something that you've experienced in profound ways in your life. So for a little context, like I just find myself, I don't even have the words and the language for it. It almost feels like it's almost like a codependency that I witness within myself when it comes to my son. But it's like I really struggle to. Here's an example. I have an incredible opportunity this year to travel overseas, and I live in Australia, to go to New York to do something that is just remarkable for my career. And I feel sick at the thought of being, so far away from him, so much that it's diluted my capacity to even feel expanded or excited about this opportunity, because there's just so much fear and anxiety around being away from my son. For a little more context that I know you'll appreciate, and I think it will lead nicely into what I know you can share. I had a really challenging pregnancy with my son. He was born, thankfully, with, no severe complications. He was able to, thrive pretty quickly after birth. But I feel like I've never actually been able to transcend the kind of the terror and the fear and the worry that was developed in me while I was pregnant. And it was a very highly monitored pregnancy. I've not been able to put down the feeling that I have to highly monitor him always. And he's 5 years old now. Tricia, he's 5 years old, and I'm tired. I'm tired.
Ah,
Yeah. And I cope with it. I cope, but I can very much witness within myself that energetically it wears me, it exhausts me. It takes up a big part of my thinking and my feeling and just my being. So I
mm.
invite you, please, because I know you have a lot to say and share on this, to offer me something.
Oh, yes. I had to go deep with that one. And so, background, so it's more around like, how do you get past the anxiety and fear, right? Of ensuring that your child is okay, so much so that you have enough space to actually think of yourself. Is that right?
I
Or
think
do
just
something without the anxiety and fear.
yes,
Got it.
yes. I kind of just feel like I've gotten to a point now that I accept that this is just maybe how I am, but I don't actually think it's true. I feel like it was developed circumstantially, and time's gone on, and I haven't been able to transcend that.
Yes. I love this question. So, 2018, our youngest of five was born 2018. And with this pregnancy, I was what I thought was the healthiest. I worked out consistently until I was maybe 7 months. And during my 7th month, I just took it really easy. Um, and I was mindful of everything, what I ate, how many vitamins I was taking, all of that good stuff. Um, and our daughter was born 2018, and as soon as she was delivered, they called the NICU in, and it took longer. My of the five children, four of them had to be C-sections. So I didn't know what was going on. And long story short, it was revealed to us as soon as our daughter was born that she was born with a very rare syndrome, a progressive and rare syndrome called Sturge-Weber syndrome. So here I am in the hospital, and the doctors, she was born with a port wine stain on the whole right side of her face, which and her right eye was larger than her left, and it was cloudy, which indicated glaucoma. So instantly the doctor saw the port wine stain and the glaucoma and printed out this thing that said Sturge-Weber syndrome. This is day one in the hospital, and handed me the printout and said, don't worry about looking it up, but here is a what are they called? Like a support group. And I'm thinking, support group? Like, what support group? And of course, I did exactly what they said not to do. And I researched Sturge-Weber syndrome. And wow, all you hear is progressive, no cure, developmental delays, seizures, um, calcification in the brain, so on and so forth. Immediately after that, we were admitted to Children's Hospital where they were running tests. And here we were waiting for the fate to understand, is she going to make it? What is making it look like if she does? And I'm not equipped. I'm not equipped to take care of a child who has these kind of needs. Like, how am I going to do that? What about my other kids? How am I going to do? And it was just scary. And it was the craziest roller coaster ride. And then, sure enough, it was like, oh, she doesn't have Sturge-Weber syndrome. They ran MRIs. They said, she must just have a port wine stain and glaucoma independently. And we're like, and then we did the 1 year MRI, and it was like, she does have it, and there's calcifications growing in her brain. And it was like, no. And then it was like, okay, we're going to get through it. And then the seizures started happening. And after her seizures, I was brought down. Talk about a level of depression and anxiety. Ooh, I lived on whatever the max level of anxiety was. I actually couldn't sleep. So I would watch her. And when you sleep and you go like, I'd be like, okay, no. Like everything was just like, I was constantly like this. Um, luckily, when I was working at this corporate job, there was a children's center right across the street.
Mm.
So we brought her there. And anytime my phone rang, my heart dropped. My anxiety went through the roof. And I looked at my phone like, is it the childcare center? If I heard a fire truck drive by, I instantly picked my phone up and I was prepared to run like across the street. Like fire truck, I'm like, okay, no, it's not me. So I lived like that for a couple years, I think it was. And I was what I would say a prisoner of my fear. When my husband and kids would go to sleep and I would stay awake to watch her, I would watch that show. Oh my gosh, I'm thinking about the foundation we created, the Big Seven. This Is Us. Look
Okay.
at.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I would watch it because it allowed me to cry through their stories and through the beauty of them as parents. So everyone would be asleep. And really, I was crying because I was a prisoner of my fear. I was afraid every day of something happening to my daughter. And so I would watch This Is Us, and it would give me the permission to cry. And through that, I started like finding this space to feel the feeling. And, like I remember with my other kids, I would look at them and be like, oh my, you're so cute. Like how tight can I squeeze you? And you would just feel like all these fluffy feelings of like, and I would look at my daughter and I would look at her and I would get that feeling and I would stop it like that. And I'd be like, oh, but what if something happens? And I would never allow myself to feel the extent of that motherly, like, oh my God. And I noticed that there was a point, I remember it vividly, where I was crying at the side of my bed. I was on my knees and I was just like, I don't know how to do this anymore. I don't even know what my voice is. All I know is that every day I'm just trying to survive. That was it. And then I was listening to uh, this podcast with Peter Crone. It was a Free Your Mind podcast. And there was this one part where he said, and this is where it got deep, where he talked about the soul. The soul, depending on what you believe in, and I relate to it this way, is that life will present you, this is his quote, life will present you with people and circumstances to reveal to you where you are still not free.
Mm.
And when I heard that, I'm like, yeah, right. Like, why would my soul, I love children. And I always said, I don't think I would be equipped to handle if my child, like my daughter Sloan, had this debilitating syndrome. How would I do it? So, yeah, right. And I remember driving down the freeway thinking, why would my soul bring a child into this world that has this syndrome that she can be functioning one moment and then it's gone? And then I remember replaying and replaying and replaying. And then it hit me. I was like, shit. Ever since she was born, all the BS, the drama that I was holding on to before didn't matter. None of it mattered. And through her birth, with her syndrome, I realized, whoa, I have learned um, the deepest example of presence, because I had two choices. I can continue to live in fear that I'm going to lose her or that she's going to be fine one day and not the next. Or I can continue to live with today, in this moment, she is great. Tomorrow, I don't know, but I'm not going to live in the fear of what if. I'm just going to cherish this moment where she is laughing, she is talking, she isn't having a seizure, so that I can fully experience her and she can fully experience me as a mom that isn't living in fear. And it never changed from that point forward. Like I now can look at her and think, oh, knowing that something may change in the background and being okay with it. Granted, if something were to change and I am okay with it, if I had a choice and the universe said, you can choose for it not to be this way, I would say, okay, I choose not. But I get that there are things that I cannot control. And so there's just this acceptance of, and sorry, the deep level of it, understanding that my soul has chosen this journey and my children's soul have chosen to be on this journey with me for whatever it is their soul needs to take from this lifetime. So I am respecting that, and I am trusting that, okay, my daughter's journey is exactly what she needs it to be. So my fear of what happens to her, I truly surrender and trusting that it'll be, we together collectively have all planned it out, and we are going to be okay with however it may or may not be. And just to have that trust in that, I think is where I am today. And really just honoring what she has done to crack my heart open in a way that has never been. Yeah, she was the start to all of this. Before her, I was doing the cycle, corporate job, go in, get out, get the kids home, feed them dinner, sleep, homework done. Same thing, rinse and repeat. And now it's different. Now I'm able to have those conversations with my son, like, ooh, I didn't, it all started with this gift of having this child who had a condition that cracked our entire family open in a way to see life, maybe in a way we wouldn't have otherwise. Now, I'm not saying that's the only way that you get that, but that's how it worked out for me.
How old is she now? Because
She's 5.
5.
She is a spicy 5-year-old. Um, she had seizures for it's she's been 3 years seizure free now. She is on medication daily to help prevent it. And before I was like, nope, she can't go on the jungle gym. No running, no running. Now I just get, I what I've learned is I'm not going to raise my daughter to know that she has a condition. I'm going to let her define the condition. And so there's a lot of surrender that's required, I think, to help that anxiety go away, and trust. A lot of trust that our souls are doing exactly what they need to do.
So powerful. Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. I wonder if you can reflect, just through your experience, what hypervigilance does to us physically, how it manifests within the body. And I guess I'm hoping that you can highlight for anybody listening that's relating or resonating with your story in any way, as to why they really have to ask for support if they don't know what to do to support themselves. Because as I listen to you, I feel compelled to share, like in what I shared about being anxious around my son and the hypervigilance, none of that is expressed to him either. So from the outside looking in, we've called him free range baby from when he was born, right? He pretty much can do whatever he wants. There's a lot of freedom and flexibility and independence that he's afforded as a conscious decision from me as to how I wanted to raise him. But within me, there is this like hypervigilance and this constant scanning and all of that. I'd like to know from your deep experience and your like completely heightened experience, I would imagine, how that manifests health-wise, energetically, spiritually, when we're not taking care of ourselves, I guess, and allowing the fear to be the operating system with which we're, allowing ourselves to be run by.
Yes. That moment, I think, where I shared with you where I was at the side of my bed, and I remember just thinking, the way it showed up for me physically is, ooh, everything felt tight. the reason why I got certified in Ayurveda was because I literally felt my fear turning into something. And I thought, okay, I can feel this fear turning into sickness. Like I felt the inside of my body just feeling like you either do something now or it's going to show up in a different way. And I was fearful of allowing myself to get sick and then not being there for any of my kids. And so that was my first kind of wake up call, was this feeling within myself that I can feel myself like something is not feeling right. If I keep functioning like this, um, I felt confident it would appear in the form of disease, and I didn't want that. And so I started paying attention to health and paying attention to different aspects of health and wellness. And then really spiritually, I think that's what truly, I've always been interested in health and wellness. But to the level that it brought me to from my daughter's diagnosis and feeling what it felt like to just be literally shackled by my fear, like feeling that tenseness in my body, feeling that that's why that statement, being a prisoner of my fear, is the best way to depict or describe what it felt like. I felt like I was confined. And spiritually, there was no room to think outside of survival. So to think that there was anything beyond, anything bigger than, was impossible for me, because all I could think of was survive, survive. And so, like you said, I did need to ask for help, and I did need to choose me for the first time. I felt guilty when I was studying for the Ayurveda, where I had to say and trust that my husband would be able to, right? Because I felt like, ooh, yeah, I know you could do it, but will you do it this way if this happens? And I had to allow it to be and give him the space to learn what his level of that looked like, and to kind of start to choose myself. And when I did, it gave me more space to speak. It gave me the ability to actually ask for help, which was so new to me too. Yeah, so asking for help may not feel comfortable. And oftentimes I feel like, at least for me, I feel like, well, it's obvious I need help. So if someone wants to help, they'll offer it. And if they don't, then they can't. And so that's why I wouldn't ask for help. But when you're brought to your knees, you have a choice. You keep going down, or you raise your hand up and you're like, please help me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's important to prompt for anybody listening too that, if we look at segments of our lives, sometimes each segment has been okay. And if we have been in survival mode, we can attest to the fact, oh, that was challenging, but I got through that. That was challenging, but I got through that. If you go back and you reflect, maybe 5 years, maybe 8 years, maybe 10 years, and you stack all of the segments together, what we can sometimes recognize and realize for ourselves is like, oh my goodness, I've been stuck in fight mode for a really long time and I don't know how to get out of this. And I share this because it's something that I had to realize and recognize for myself. So if I just go back the last 5 years, so I had a very challenging, very difficult pregnancy with my son, where it felt like I was in brace position. If you can imagine, if a plane's going to crash, I was being prepared for the worst. Brace position for over 2 months. It was like brace position. Then he was born and we were blessed that worst case scenario didn't manifest for him, but my body was still in brace position. And when you're expecting the worst, even when you get great like news, my body couldn't release from that brace position. And then I had a newborn, and then I was just experiencing what I still believe was postpartum depression. Nobody else will attest or affirm that for me, because I was functioning and productive and doing all the things, but nobody knows what it was like within my body and within my brain, and just how hypervigilant I was. And I look back now and I'm like, that's not normal. That's not well. That's not. Then we went into COVID and had 2 years of lockdown. And then we've had significant challenges within our family. The last 5 years, it's just been challenge after challenge. And I know I'm not alone in this. And many people will say, well, that's life. That's life. Okay. Okay. But how are we responding? And how is it manifesting within us? And how on earth do we invite ourselves out of fight or flight when we've existed there for so long? And so I'm specifically asking you this. I know you spoke of there was an element of surrender that you had to give yourself to. But even after we surrender, how do we untangle ourselves from feeling so tightly wound when, we might have been bracing for 5+ years?
Yes. Well, honestly speaking, I just learned that through the training.
Yeah.
I would not have had an answer prior to, because I can relate to being, and there's a part of me that is still in the fight flight mode because of certain circumstances around my family and my father's passing. And what gets me to unwind is the training, because it allows me to allow what's coming up to be felt.
Mm.
And I've always been so passionate about movement and to move it out. And I think for me, how I go from pulling back so that's how I am now. Thankfully, due to the training that we went through, I understand what I can do somatically to get out of that mode.
Yeah.
What I did before that training, outside of the surrendering to accepting, it was really the releasing, let's say, of the shackles of being tense and locked in a position that I couldn't get out of, was truly understanding and believing that if I am present with my daughter, that is the only thing I can control as it relates to the outcome of her life. So if I only get to give her X amount of moments where I'm fully present and she gets to experience the depth of my love without fear, then to me that was worth it all. And that just reflection for myself allowed me to pull back from fight and flight and be the feeling of love and presence.
I love the way that you just worded that, like to feel the depth of my love without fear. And I think that's such an aspiration, right, for us all to learn how to love without a clinginess and neediness and attachment and expectation, a fear. Thank you. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. I want her to do that, feel the depth of my love without feeling the worry that she will be taken from me. Right. Because that's me. That's my pain of her being taken care away from me versus me giving her this depth of love that I have for her. Yeah.
Truly beautiful. Truly beautiful. Thank you. No, it's such a profound and powerful example of how we can heal ourselves, create new patterns within our family dynamics, pave a new path. What a gift. What a gift for your children, and ultimately what a gift for yourself to experience it in this life, right? We still middle finger the challenges of it all. Let's be clear, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, just absolutely. Like I double middle finger all the challenges. Like right now, I'm like double birding and like throwing up the middle finger on my toes as well. I'm not welcoming it with open arms, like, oh, so this is life. No, I accept that it is hard as hell right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Both things get to be true. We can be pissed about it and also aware of what it's there to show us and teach us, and, to be willing to be led by it too.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. I see the human in you and I cherish the humanness in you. So thank you very much for your willingness to just share as I knew you would, my friend. Is there anything else to round out this episode that you might want to say, or do you feel complete?
I'm willing to say anything. Oh, well, let's see. Is there anything else I would love to say? There's so much of it that I'm still going through. Um, but I would really, if there was anything to share, I would say oftentimes if there's anyone that can relate to the feeling that I know I often feel of like, how will I get through it, or can I get through it? I've come to you so many times like, how, like, can you, I'm feeling stuck or incapable of, um and it's that reaching out, like when I reach out to you and you just drop these words of wisdom through your own experience, it is oftentimes what gives me the ability to drop the shoulders and breathe. And then that's the first step for me that then allows me to go into the somatic aspect. But it took like the reaching out to say, hey, you know, and I felt blessed to get your time, to say, I feel incapable. I'm not sure I can. And there's often times where I felt like giving up, and it was the being able to tell somebody exactly that gave me the space to say, oh, okay, it can suck and you can get through it.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm. And you know what? I want to layer and offer on top of that, only because I've just come out of sharing a practice today, and two of the mantras that I used um, layered nicely on top of each other. So the first was around declaring and just really acknowledging that there's no such thing as a perfect person, right? Really being with that and knowing that. And we can get there. Most of us can get there. But the second part of that mantra becomes, and I cherish my humanness. I cherish my humanness. So if I can declare there's no such thing as a perfect person, okay, you can be with that truth, but can you cherish your humanness? And I share this because I think it's so important for us, you know, to be really gentle and tender with ourselves, and to be really gentle and tender with the people around us. And, when somebody does reach out to us and share the way that they're feeling, that we don't try and minimize that in any way, that we let their feelings live, that we don't tell someone, oh, don't be silly, don't be ridiculous, it's fine. To really learn, to really upskill our capacity and our emotional intelligence, and the way that we communicate in a way that we can hold people in whatever it is that they are experiencing, and allow them to feel safe in the humanness that they've felt vulnerable enough to share, but then to offer that widened perspective too. And you do that for us all the time, my love. So I'm only happy to hear that it's reciprocated back. But I just want to share this as an example of the way that we develop right relationship, and we actually heal each other, and we actually support each other. Yeah.
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 I love that.
Yeah. All right, my love. Thank you so much for your time, your effort, your energy, your being. I'm going to share all of your details with the show notes for anybody that wants to reach out and share anything that they found insightful or helpful, or maybe ask you some questions. I'm sure there will be people that relate deeply to your story, that will feel really held and heard, knowing that there's somebody out there that, is managing to go another day and another day. So thank you. Thank you deeply.
Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me the inspiration and for reaching my hand when I was reaching out for help.
Beautiful. Love you.
Love